What is democratic socialism? Or, democratic socialism isn't what Bernie says it is. It's really much simpler. Greetings, guys and girls. Saint here. As you may or may not know, I have a degree in political science, and I wanted to drop some information on you guys. When it comes to looking at political ideologies within political science, there are really 4 areas that we need to work in and we need to look at to help define how that ideology sees the world. They go explanation, evaluation, orientation, and then program. I'll explain. Explanation is how do we account for our current social conditions. Evaluation is after having made that accounting, how much of the explanation caused by what. And I'll give an example in a bit. Orientation is where does the individual, that would be you or me or whoever, fall within that situation. And finally, the program is what are you going to do about it. Each political ideology has a different explanation, evaluation, orientation, and program for it. And that's what makes things different. And that's why we may all have the same goal. A friend of mine is on the left side. I'm more on the right side. We decided that we can't really talk about politics a lot but we can still be friends because we have the same goals. We want to help people. We want to see people lifted out of poverty. We want to see people be able to express themselves freely. However, we have completely opposite ways of going about it. He believes that in order to do that, we have to have governmental oversight into certain things. He believes that we can do that by creating a very large and broad safety net. Whereas I don't necessarily believe that. I believe the safety net can be smaller, and that'll force people to grow and to maybe go out of their comfort zone. Let's do a real example of this using the Black Lives Matter movement. First, they would see an issue, and that issue is that police officers are shooting black men. So how would they explain that? They would posit the theory that it's probably because of racism. So then they go to evaluate their theory. And their theory is, okay, so it's probably caused by racism. So is this a systemic racism? Is this just in the police force in general? Is it an economic one? Could there be class one? Are women treated differently? Could it be gender? And they go to explain that. Once they explain that, then the individuals have to look at their orientation. Where am I in this whole mix? And this orientation is going to put what I can do. So if I realize that I'm a college student, I can be a foot soldier. I can be someone who's going out and making things happen as best as I can see to raise awareness. If I'm a celebrity, I can't really go out there and be doing that, but I'm going to use my celebrity to be able to draw attention to issues. So it could be wearing an armband. It could be wearing a headband. Who knows? It could also be going out there and coming out of the football tunnel and with your hands up, hands up, don't shoot. Whatever it is. Maybe if you're a political person, you have the authority to prosecute people who you deem to be a problem in this. And then based on where you are in the thing, if you're a white individual out of college, maybe you're just going to be silent and just stand by them and be the one to hold the microphone for them. Who knows? It depends on how white guilty you are. And then finally, your program, and that's where you're going to actually put the stuff into practice. Seeing where you are in relation to the problem is going to determine what you do. Every political ideology is going to take the issue of black young men being shot by police in a different way. If you're a Marxist, it's going to be more class-based than anything else. If you're a feminist, you're going to be looking at it from the gender issue. Oh, it's the patriarchy that's just killing males and all that kind of stuff. If you're a communitarian liberal, you're going to look at the cultural degradation. If you're a conservative, you're going to be looking at the cultural degradation. If you're a communitarian liberal, you're going to look at what things that are affecting the community. Is it alcohol? Is it pornography? Whatever. What is it that's going to be affecting this? So what does this have to do with Bernie Sanders? I'm pretty burnt out. when it comes to democratic socialism and the Sanders evangelicals, there seems to be a lot of confusion. From what I've seen, Bernie Sanders try to explain democratic socialism. He doesn't actually ever really... And I've heard explanations like, well, democratic socialism is actually capitalism. Where... What? No. No, it's not. No. Bad. But let's watch a couple examples where Bernie Sanders defines it, and that should help us understand more of where the confusion's coming from.
You call yourself a democratic socialist. How can any kind of socialist win a general election in the United States?
Well, we're going to win because first we're going to explain what democratic socialism is. And what democratic socialism is about is saying that it is immoral and wrong that the top 1/10 of 1% in this country own almost 90%, own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. That it is wrong today in a rigged economy that 57% of all new income is going to the top 1%. That when you look around the world, you see every other major country providing health care to all people as a right, except the United States. You see every other major country saying to moms that when you have a baby, we're not going to separate you from your newborn baby because we are going to have medical and family paid leave like every other country on earth. Those are some of the principles that I believe in, and I think we should look to countries like Denmark, like Sweden, and Norway, and learn from what they have accomplished for their working people.
Not if we have the opportunity to describe what democratic socialism means. And what that means is you have countries like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, other European countries, which have had social democratic governments and labor governments. And the result of that is, in those countries, health care is a right of all people. I don't see that as a great problem. At a time when so many of our young people can't afford to go to college, tuition is free in many of those countries. They have excellent child care, strong retirement benefits. They're often very strongly pro-environment, taking on climate change. So I think when people understand that in those countries, governments are working for the middle class rather than the billionaire class, I think we can get our message across.
You know, you've talked about raising the minimum wage to $15. You've talked about making college education free for everybody.
Public college.
Public college education.
Yeah.
How would you pay for that?
Good question. And the answer is that at a time when we have massive income and wealth inequality, we have got to ask the wealthiest people and largest corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes. It's simple as all that. Right now, we are losing over $100 billion every year because profitable corporations are stashing their profits in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda and other tax havens. You got a guy like Warren Buffett, one of the richest guys in the world, who openly admits that his effective tax rate is lower than his secretary's. So I think it is time to tell the billionaire class that if they want to enjoy the benefits of America, they've got to accept their responsibilities and they have to start paying their fair share of taxes.
This is not democratic socialism, Bernie. According to these definitions, democratic socialism is only measured in terms of how it benefits the individual. I understand that he may not have the time always to flesh out the reality of what it is, but what he's doing is about as disingenuous as someone being asked what Christianity is, and then replying, Christians believe in tithing, worshiping God, and reading the Bible. Well, yes, those are things that you do, but they definitely do not sum up in total, or even just in general, what is Christianity? According to Sanders, democratic socialism is the belief that healthcare is a right, college tuition should be free, childcare should be free, we should have retirement benefits, we should have strong environmental policies, and the government should work for the middle class. That doesn't look at how do they see the world, that doesn't look at what are the programs to fixing it. How is healthcare being a right going to fix the problems? What are the problems? And yes, he blames the 1%. But what are the 1% doing that are preventing the people from getting health care? What are they? There's so much that's wrong with it.
We need to develop a political movement which, once again, is prepared to take on and defeat a ruling class whose greed is destroying our nation. So let me take this opportunity to define for you, simply and straightforwardly, what democratic socialism means to me. It means building on what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said when he fought for guaranteed economic rights for all Americans. And it builds on what Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1968 when he stated, and I quote, "This country has socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor," end of quote. My view of democratic socialism builds on the success of many other countries around the world who have done a far better job than we have in protecting the needs of their working families, their elderly citizens, their children, their sick, and their poor. Democratic socialism means that we must reform a political system which is corrupt, that we must create an economy that works for all, not just the very wealthy.
The problem with Bernie Sanders' explanation to Georgetown University is that it's to Georgetown University and not the public. What he did there was a much better justification for what democratic socialism is than to the more public and the more mainstream thing. And I think it does it a lot better. I much prefer this response from the Ball and Dagger text that I've cited before. On page 173, it's taken straight from it. True socialism requires government of, by, and for the people. It aims to give everyone an equal voice in the decision that affects his or her life, in direct and important ways. But this can only happen, socialists say, if no one person or class controls most of the wealth and resources, and thus most of the power within a society. Wealth and resources must be shared evenly and owned and controlled for the benefit of the whole society if true democracy is ever to take place. Otherwise, they insist, we shall have nothing but government of the wealthy, by the wealthy, and for the wealthy. Imagine, if you will, that every political ideology has an agent and a goal, and between these two is an obstacle. In socialism, the agent is the common working person, and the goal is fulfillment of human needs through satisfying work or a fair share of the product. What stands between the two are class division, economic inequalities, unequal life chances, and false consciousness. That's a summary of page 118 from the Ball and Dagger book. However, these false consciousness could be the idea, in our previous example using police brutality towards blacks, that police officers are there to protect and serve, and that when we follow the law we won't have any issues. Now, on the opposite side, the false consciousness could be the fact that the police people are out to get the blacks, and therefore they're going to act more suspect. This, one could argue based on our previous discussion, may cause someone to be put in a situation where they can be exploited or affected due to systemic racism. Well, that's about it. Democratic socialism is not, as one meme I saw said, is merely capitalism that helps people. It's the belief that everyone should have an equal voice when it comes to decisions that affect their life, but only if not one particular class controls all the wealth and power. We have to share wealth and resources to make sure that everyone can have a say and everyone has a chance to be able to prosper. There you go. And that took me a lot less time than all those quotes from Bernie Sanders. It makes sense. And then you can go on there and say, and we do this by doing X, Y, and Z. Now, if that's what you want to believe, that's fine. And I truly believe that Sanders believes that. I also truly believe he's sincerely wrong about it. However, let me quote Paul and show you a more excellent way in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you've got any comments, if you've got any questions, let me know. You can post them on there. I want to do a shout out to the Fundamental Escape podcast. While I don't know that I necessarily agree with everything, he's very kind, and on my video that kind of replied to them and everything. And so there are links in the bottom. Check them out. I hope that something I said in here gave you pause to think, maybe explain something you didn't know before, or banished your ignorance in some awesome way.